October 2008, Himachal Pradesh, northern India. We're traveling to Dharamsala, formerly a British tourist retreat. Today, it is the home of the Dalai Lama and to the Tibetan government in exile. Tibetans first relocated to Dharamsala in 1960. Another window displays a heart-wrenching poster of the protests in March 2008, which were followed by terrible repression on behalf of the Chinese authorities. When the treaty was soon violated, the Dalai Lama was forced to flee. 85,000 Tibetans followed him. Over 1,200,000 Tibetans have been killed. 6,000 monuments have been destroyed. The repression continues to this day. Since the protests, China's control over the Tibetan population has become even more severe. The number of people who try to leave Tibet by crossing the mountains in winter has dramatically decreased. Every year, hundreds of people perish while trying to escape this way. Since the March 2008 protests, however, the number of Tibetans attempting this route has fallen from the thousands of previous years to a small handful. Those who do make it to Nepal head for Dharamsala to receive the Dalai Lama's blessing and the chance for a scholastic and professional education. We have asked to interview the director of the Center for Human Rights, an NGO that has been following the Tibetan struggles for years by publishing informative materials of great importance.
Since the 10th of March protests inside Tibet, the Chinese government has arrested many people and more than 100 people died under this repressive action of the Chinese government. And today
we have asked to interview the head of the Voice of Tibet radio station, Karma Yeshi, a well-informed journalist and parliament member.
Information from exile to inside Tibet and is very, very important. We cannot send documents inside. If somebody caught documents related to Dalai Lama to Tibet, he or she will be arrested and punished like anything. And this radio is the only medium. So,
how are women treated in Tibet? The answer is given to us by Darden Charling, the spokesperson for the Tibetan Women's Association and head of their research department.
And likewise, once the policy came into effect, there was a huge and a massive mass sterilization and abortion that had taken place in Tibet. And this kind of, I think, marred the, social essence of a woman's life. And
we are headed to the Center for Ex-Political Prisoners. Secretary General Phuntsok Wangchuk has marched for Tibetan independence and led an uprising in Lhasa's terrible Dragchi prison.
아니 다치다네 나의 종간나 루두시아나 베림부리스 아니 야디는 도두시기스 아니 가레스나다 나 정말 루두지지 아니 예 롭진나로라 아니 베랑제 좀 된데다 아니 군두기 게스트 된데 두스파조 템베체제 좀진 딜데나 나 종간도 추브리스.
Yeah, it is a long story. However, to tell you briefly, he was a student before he was imprisoned, and he distributed speeches of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And
since 1979, when the then Chinese Supreme Leader Deng Xiaoping, he approached His Holiness Dalai Lama that there should be a dialogue now between the government of China and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Of course, the government of China does not recognize the Tibetan government in exile.
In order to understand the state of talks between Tibet and China, we have been allowed a meeting with the Tibetan Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Sonam Dagpo, who is also the member of the Tibetan delegation, which for years has met with its Chinese counterpart.
Since 2002 to 2008, we had 7 rounds of discussion with the Chinese leadership.
6 times in China and 1 in Bern in Switzerland.
But not all Tibetans agree with the idea of autonomy. A few NGOs represent an opposition to this solution. They advocate a complete independence from China for a truly independent Tibet. The most powerful of these organizations is the Tibetan Youth Congress.
Well, as an organization, Tibetan Youth Congress, our main goal is to regain Tibet's independence. And that's been since the inception of Tibetan Youth Congress in 1970. And even today, we still have the same goal.
The Tibetan struggle, however, is still talked about because of the ongoing efforts of the Dalai Lama and the successful work of pro-Tibet organizations. Students for a Free Tibet is a youthful and enthusiastic international organization that has a large foreign membership.
In terms of power, you have to seize the opportunity. You cannot ask somebody to give you, power. Whether you ask for autonomy, whether you ask for independence, it is basically about power.
Another NGO which hopes for an independent Tibet is the National Democratic Party, a product of the Tibetan Youth Congress.
Of course, one day there will be some result, of course, and I think it's, according to the political steps, sometimes political step is going up and down.
Tibetan struggle so far has been very non-violent. We organized hunger strikes, demonstrations, peace marches. There's not a violence at all. In 1999, when I was the vice president of the Tibetan Youth Congress, I was on hunger strike in Geneva, right outside the UN Human Rights Commission. Those days it was Commission, now it's Council. And we were doing a protest. Mary Robinson, the Irish lady, was the chairperson of the Commission.
The book salesman and writer Lansang Tserin is a historical figure of the Tibetan effort for independence.
When I saw evidence of Chinese population transfer, I risked my life to come out and to inform His Holiness. I said, the Chinese have this policy to send in Chinese settlers into Tibet. They have hundreds of millions to spare, and
Night falls on Dharamsala. What kind of future will there be for Tibet?